first thing you got to look at your funding body. Who is administering this grant? Who is offering this money? And look through what they do. Like, just as much as you learn your craft and know what you're talking about in what you do, you need to really research them and figure out what they do and what their priorities are.
So a few years ago, when I was an ignoramus and I thought I could just get money whenever to do my program called Detour, I went and I saw Shahina Sayani at ArtReach Toronto. And it was the best decision of my life. Listen guys, if you're going to apply for a grant, do yourself a favor, go meet the funding organization. They can tell you exactly what they're looking for, word for word.
Be concise, to the point, and answer the question directly. I know everyone out there has a lot to say, but remember that the funder is receiving 50, 100 grant applications that they have to read through. So you want to keep it short, keep it direct, and remember, read the question carefully and answer it.
A lot of times people think that because it's a grant, it has to be really wordy and long, and it definitely usually ends up being long, but fluffery and sort of things that aren't factual a lot of times go to just confusing the process and just making it look a little bit vague. Stay away from getting too big with ideas. Being really clear and concise and sticking to your key messages is definitely the best way to be successful in grant writing.
So specifically in terms of theatre, if you've never written a grant, definitely get involved with some people that already have. When No Man's Land first started, we tried to get a lot of money, and we had this great idea about what we were going to be, but we found out that it was quite difficult in the sense that people don't seem to fund ideas. If you build something and there's something already there, then people will come and they have an idea of what you're about, what you're going to do, and they trust you a lot more.
Often I like to suggest that people give themselves a good amount of time to do their work plan, because it is something that the funders, when they're looking at your application, spend a lot of time on, because it really shows exactly what your project is going to be all about. So don't leave it till the last minute. Give yourself enough time to do a really solid work plan.
I just kind of want to get you guys to envision the work plan in a picture. So if you can think of your overall goals as kind of the larger picture, and then the objective is kind of in the center, and then you have your activities, which are really specific and should be really clear and consistent with both your middle level objectives and your overall goals. And I think that's a really important way to kind of see how they all connect, so that when you're actually writing out your work plan, you can make sure that they all contribute to the larger goals and create sort of a solid foundation for where you would like the project to go.
I always suggest to applicants that they ask the funder for a template for the work plan. Usually the work plan template will have headings that could include goals, objectives, activities, sometimes your evaluation measures, and the resources that you need. Sometimes they might also ask about the outcomes of your activities. When you're doing your work plan, it's really important to make sure that all of those things flow, that the activities are reflecting how you're going to achieve your objectives, and that the outcomes show what your activities will result in.
One important thing to keep in mind when you're writing grants is to be able to show the funder how you're going to evaluate the project throughout the entire project. And ways you can do this is to be able to build that into your work plan. The types of things that you want to build into your work plan for evaluation are tools on how to basically measure the activities and outcomes of whatever project you're doing. If you're in a group setting, you might want to just ask your participants if they like the program, if it's meeting their needs. You could also do it through an online survey. The participant wouldn't have to list their name, so that it's a confidential, anonymous survey. There's also more arts-based ways to evaluate your projects, and this could be done through making a video with your participants, holding a storytelling circle or a learning circle, and being able to make that more artistic and enjoyable for participants to be able to share what kind of effect the program is having on them.
Numbers and artists don't usually mesh, but having that skill to be able to do it, to understand it, to love it is amazing. Once you understand how something works, you'll be able to do it so easily. I have a number of budget tips for you today. Budget tip number 1, make sure all your numbers add up correctly. Budget tip number 2, be specific as possible. Show the breakdowns, show the formulas, show hourly rates, show everything that needs to be paid for in that project. And make sure you always have a budget line for administration. Budget tip number 3, make sure to include all the revenue that you have in one project on the budget. You should mention whether or not it's pending or confirmed. That might be the factor for the funder to decide whether or not you get this grant.
Yeah, there's a process in the beginning, but there's also a process near the end. You're gonna have to report all the spending, where all the money went, if anything changed. So make sure from the jump you're keeping a tally of all that information, because later on down the road, trust me, I made this mistake. You live and you learn. Make sure, for the sake of your reporting at the end, keep a tally of everything that goes on from the beginning all the way to the end, because it'll bite you in the end if you don't have that information. Trust me. It can get in the way of you applying for more money later on if you don't hand in those reports. I've been there, trust me. I lived, I learned. So take it from me. Do your reports from the jump. Get prepared for those reports from the beginning of the grant application all the way to the end.
Your support materials are very, very, very important. So make sure that you have really awesome visual things you can send them along with your application. Get any video that you can. If you're a performing artist, you know, any footage of you performing. If you are an artist educator, any testimonials from students or you in action, like something other than just like paper and words, because that can get really dry. They look through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications, and you have to make sure that you stand out.
Send your best material. I would say the longest that you sort of get to be able to show for the funders to look at your materials would be 5 minutes max.
You need to be able to back up your goals, your objectives with tangible things. So if you have testimonials or outcomes from work that you've already done, having letters of support from different organizations and that type of thing goes a long way to convincing and swaying the review team for sure.
Make sure to get everything in on time. That's the grant application, your receipts, your reporting, all that stuff. Get it in on time, because that will really, really determine your next grant coming up. See you soon.
Hi, I'm Angus Finnan with the Ontario Arts Council, and my number 1 tip is call the officers or the office of the granting agency you wish to talk to, because it's much easier to talk to a real person and get answers than it is to find it off the page. Most applications that come in without having had a preliminary conversation are missing details or maybe off the mark in terms of eligibility, and that would be solved just by 1 phone call.
My name's Anna Skinner, and I work with the Laidlaw Foundation. And so my general tip for everyone is, once you figure out that you are eligible, make it really easy for us, which makes it easy for you, by highlighting how you hit all of the funding priorities. So one suggestion about that is write in your organizational description, tailor it to the particular funder. So in the case of Laidlaw, we focus on youth-led groups. So write in your description, you could say XYZ is a youth-led organization that focuses on addressing community issues in Toronto. That way, you right off the bat told us that you're eligible, told us that you hit our funding priorities, and then we won't have any questions about that.
My name is Soraya Pirbai, and I'm the Grants Officer at the Toronto Arts Council. My number 1 tip for grant writing, if you're applying to an arts council, is to speak from your own voice, not to speak from an imagined formal or more authoritative voice, but just your own. If you're applying as an individual, say I. If you're applying as part of the group, say we. I think most of the great grants that I have read are really about one person's very unique search. It's about their curiosity and their line of inquiry, their way of working through an idea. And that could be about, you exploring your parents' heritage and, the bicultural heritage they've left you. It could be about exploring icons of, b-boying and urban dance and hip-hop and seeing how another generation of artists connect with that. But ultimately it's about something that you are curious about in a way that no one else is. So one of the things I say to applicants is imagine that you're talking to a group of people who really care about your work, but who aren't just going to be there to rah-rah and support you, but who are actually going to challenge you and say, well, what do you really mean by that? And ultimately it's about what you're curious about and why that matters.
My name is Anne-Marie Beneteau, and I'm a program manager at the Ontario Trillium Foundation in the Toronto office. And my biggest tip is when you write your grant application, don't assume we know what you're talking about. I can't tell you how many times I receive grant applications and I'll read an application and I'll read it twice, 3 times, and I still don't know what you're talking about. In our community grants program, it's really important that you really tell us your story, give us the context of your organization, of your community, of where you come from. That's really, really important. And avoid jargon and words that maybe you're very familiar with, but or terms or acronyms, because people assessing your application, they're more generalist, so they may not know a thing about you. So a good way to test that is before you submit your application, give it to a friend or someone who doesn't know very much about the organization. Have them read it, and if it makes sense to them, well, it'll probably make sense to us too. So that's my #1 tip.
My name's Viola Delkio, and I'm with the Laidlaw Foundation. And my #1 tip is, please, when you develop your work plan and your activities, make sure they match the budget. They should correlate. So whatever you're putting out in your activity and work plan, it should be reflected in the budget. We look at those, and when they don't connect to each other, it just doesn't make sense. So it's a very logical flow between coming up with your objectives and then the activities of how you're going to make your project happen, and then a clear budget. You don't have to kind of make up fancy line items. They just need to correlate to what you want to do. So for example, if you're writing a proposal and part of it you need workshops to happen, but then your budget has all this stuff about buying equipment and nothing about the workshops, the review committee is going to say, what is that about? It doesn't make any sense. It should make sense to you, and it should be a flow and make sense to whoever's reading your proposal.
My name is Shahina Sayani, and I'm the program manager for ArtReach Toronto. The tip I'd like to share with you today is around in-kind contributions. It really is significant to show all your in-kind contributions in your budget and talk about them in your proposal, because it really shows community-based support for what it is that you're doing. So when you're speaking about a donation, that generally refers to money or a monetary contribution to your project or your initiative, whereas an in-kind contribution generally refers to goods and services that are contributed towards your project. So some examples of goods and services that can be contributed in kind are staffings, or they might be contributing graphic design services. So something that you can actually put into a monetary or a dollar figure, but is actually given to you in a different form. So it might seem difficult at first, but all in-kind contributions can be converted into dollar figures and put into your budget. So for example, if it's a meeting space or a program space, and you know it would have cost you $50 an hour to rent that space, but even though you don't have to pay for it, it still would have cost you $50 an hour, so that's an actual number that you can put into your budget.
Hi, my name's Christy. I'm the music officer at the Toronto Arts Council. One thing that absolutely irritates me, and I think all grants officers would agree, is when your budgets don't balance. So before you submit your application, make sure that you add up your revenue and your expenses. Get out a calculator, get Excel, do something, but make sure that all of the numbers on your revenue side and all the numbers on your expense side balance, and they are the same number. If you do that, I'll be happy, and so will every other grants officer.
Hi, my name is Margot Charlton, and I'm a grants officer at the Toronto Arts Council. And I have 3 short tips for you, and they all begin with C: competition, clarity and curiosity. Remember, when you're applying to an arts council, it's a competition, so you must put your best foot forward. Make sure what you put down on the paper is really clear, and hand it off to someone else to read to see if they understand what you want to do. And finally, remember that you are applying to an arts council, and the people who'll be reading it and making a decision about your grant are artists, and they are curious artists. So make sure you talk about your art form, what's driving you, the aesthetics, what's important to you. Remember, you're talking about art.
To everybody out there applying for a grant or trying to get some money from the government through some application of some sort, don't be afraid to go for that money. That money is being given out. When I first applied, I didn't know whether or not we were eligible. We're just like, hey, we might as well just try. Maybe we will get it. And what do you know? We got 50 G's. So you just got to try. You just got to apply, and if you don't get it, try again. If you don't get it, try again. If you don't get it again, I'm going to keep on saying try again, but at some point you can give up whenever you want. But just keep on trying, all right?
It's intimidating, I guess would be the word. Especially being an artist, you look at all the, of the writing that you have to do, things like that. But really, it's just speak from your heart and, pick a grant that you really like, and I think it would be enjoyable almost to write it.
Do your due diligence about the community and put all your passion the way you want to say it on paper.
When a group or an organization or an individual actually communicates their passion in some way in the proposal, for me that really stands out because it shows that they're really dedicated towards what they're doing and really trying to make a difference.
Just keep it honest to yourself and to the funder, and only take as much as you can do. Be honest on that.
Whatever you're going to apply for, be original and try to create something that will last longer than the funding of the program, because that really makes an impact.